Thank you very much. ICAO is exactly explained body of the regulator, but the purpose of this organization is not just regulating, enhance aviation for the future, as the title mentioned. So we are the international organization to make standard which is necessary to secure safety and security of the aviation.
Right, but when you say make standards or do standards, give me an idea of the range of standards that you're responsible for.
Basically related to safety and security of the aviation. If you do not have a clear standard, what kind of aircraft you could use for the international flight, or what kind of security management you are necessary to endorse the international flight, you couldn't manage international flight. So the main field is this field. But in addition to that, recently, we need to also think about the sustainability, what kind of fuel we could use for the future.
Right, but it's highly technical. A lot of the work is extremely technical. And, but this, for example, sustainability question is not only technical, but it's fundamental. You have your Corsair, which is the main global aviation sustainability program, correct?
Yes, exactly.
Just maybe bring that a bit closer so you have to straight.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Tim, as you look at the relationship with ICAO, because again, at one level, the airline doesn't have a relationship per se, because it's through your regulator and through your country. But at the same time, you're very well aware of what ICAO is doing, or you have people in the airline that are aware.
Yes, absolutely. The organization, as you say, is a governmental function from the United Nations. Most of the countries are represented at ICAO one way or the other, and it is in that framework and the structures that were put in place decades ago with regard to how a civil aviation was going to operate, and as the President said, safety of operation, all the other bits and pieces that go with this. So they provide the framework in which all airlines, I say without exception, comply with. And as you mentioned, the regulators of those countries that are a part of ICAO make sure that the rules of the game are applied to the carriers in those particular countries.
Is there a disconnect, in your view, between what the airlines want and need and what the regulators provide at the speed at which they provide it?
Well, that's an interesting question. I am quite sure that ICAO would move at a far greater pace if it wasn't one based on consensus. And unfortunately, in the world today, consensus is one of that rare things that happens. So some governments who are represented at ICAO don't quite agree with what the ICAO management or structures would require. You mentioned sustainability. That's a classic case. So you have to have at the head of ICAO, the ability to manage the differences of opinion within the various structures that are coming down the track. It could be tech, cybersecurity, or whatever. And you've got to get a fairly diverse group of countries with different agendas around the table to try and come up with a common answer or way forward.
Right. Yeah. Now, you are the president of ICAO. There is a secretariat, the Secretary General, who deals with the actual nuts and bolts of it. But you are responsible for bringing together, if you will, the political consensus. Does that still work?
Very good question. Honestly speaking, it's very challenging. Originally, our organization's council member is just above 20. Now we have 36 members.
That's too many.
From the business viewpoint, yeah, as the scale of the board member, I'm not quite sure it is a manageable scale or not. But the reality, all of the UN agency has a council member, much more than us. And our organization will soon accommodate additional 4 members. So how could you manage this 40 membership as effective as the board member, which is expected by airlines? That is a very challenging matter. So I'm trying to, firstly, actively listen all the voices and in which way we could get the point of the consensus, that is very important thing. Then how to encourage everybody to go to the consensus by saying it is also your merit. Because safety and security of the international aviation is very fundamental.
Right, but it's no. Here's the problem. Everybody will agree with you that, well, we must not make any compromises with safety. But, safety first. And before long, everything is well and truly bogged down. A good example of this, we were just talking, is commercial space. Now, we've had a couple of examples in the last couple of years where the privatization of space has led to an enormous increase in private space launches, satellites, which is great. But every time one of these things goes wrong, even though there's, thank God, no loss of life, it can completely screw up civil aviation for hundreds, if not thousands of miles. How can you deal with this?
First of all, we need to examine the reality of the technology and correctly forecast what's the impact of these kind of technologies. That might take time, but we need to secure the appropriate observation and judgment of the forecast and possibility of these kind of technology. Sometimes the stakeholders tend to talk their own field as much as optimistic. That is sometimes, as you mentioned, very biased. But to delete such kind of bias, it is necessary to have the different angle of view.
You see, we don't want to stop SpaceX or whoever it is launching a rocket, because that is the future. We don't want to stop them, but we also don't want Tim's planes from Florida to back into to Dubai to be badly delayed because they've had to close the airspace, do you, Tim?
Well, that's absolutely right. I just wonder in the broad sort of spectrum of what's actually happening, how significant these things are. At the moment, we know we have a lot more rocket launches because of what's been going on, and the Musk organization has been doing, but in terms of what actually happens compared to the number of aircraft flying in a particular area at a particular time in that zone, then this can be managed at the moment. These rocket launches are known about. We do not know what they're going to do. He's had his fair share of things going wrong and blowing up.
But this could get greater as, say, for example, others decide to, Bezos, for example, decides to get into the lower Earth orbit satellite business, and others and more of them.
That's absolutely true. But in the end, you can, for the same reason that we can exert control of anything in the air if we want to, we've got the technology to do it. And let's assume that the rockets that are going up in the future are a lot more safer than the ones he's experimenting with now. The likelihood of something having a problem and exploding is pretty remote going forward. But if you do know that we've got eyes on it, and the air traffic controllers in the region that these take place are fully aware. And it's not just America; it's the Caribbean. We saw Venezuela, etc. All of these countries could, if they're all coordinated, say we've got a rocket launch coming up.
Let's talk about airspace, because airspace is the signal. In a way, ICAO. The ability of ICAO to negotiate and reach consensus on airspace management is one of your core functions.
Yes.
Arguably, there needs to be a complete rethink of airspace to make it more efficient, You're looking puzzled there, Tim.
No, I'm just listening to this wonderful...
You agree?
Be careful, of course. Yeah.
But this part of the world is a good example of the needing to have a rethink of airspace to make it smoother and easier, so your planes are not having to circle.
I think that's not a question of managing the airspace with a new system. It's just managing the compression that happens. But a good system will take care of compression. What we don't see is, for instance, in the European theatre, that kind of thinking, recognition that we can do things a lot better if we harmonise and have one system. In the Middle East, actually, they've advanced their systems really, really rapidly to deal with what has happened in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and everywhere else. In fact, it's a Herculean task, but they've actually done really well, but I don't see it in other countries.
Sir.
Yeah. One of the problem of this coordination is, I shouldn't say too many, but we have a lot of stakeholders for the coordination. In particular, airspace management control, we have a lot of different coordinator and flight information region need to be coordinated. So how to make this coordination and process much easier is one of the issues among the one of the consensus issues of the stakeholders. We have a lot. Yeah.
But you see, this is my criticism. It's doomed to failure, in a sense, without being too pessimistic, because you have an exceptionally complex issue, yes, and you're trying to solve it by consensus. You're never going to get there.
Of course, it's a very challenging matter, but so long as matter is the safety and security, which could share as the whole goal, and it is very technical in nature, as you mentioned, I think it is much easier to get compared to the very purely geopolitical matter, which could have a lot of different standpoints. So long as the matter is safety and security, I'm never being pessimistic. I'm optimistic.
One of the wonderful things about ICAO is do you remember the old baggage tag?
Yes.
That you used to get? And it used to say, this is not the luggage label as described by article whatever of the Montreal or whatever treaty it was. In other words, it was limiting liability and that. ICAO has an enormous number of old-fashioned rules that need to be stripped away.
Yes, that's true. So we encourage member states to identify and recognize that what is old-fashioned and what is required by the industry. That's one of the very important functions of ICAO, to encourage or sometimes educate member states. But we nearly need to recognize what is the problem.
But you see, the problem, Tim, you've got, for example, you're telling me about the new procedures or the advanced procedures that you're looking at putting in here. Tell me in terms of passport control and the ability to do biometrics. Tell me again this idea.
Well, many forward-thinking states are taking the whole question of access and departure to their countries very seriously, because obviously they don't want to impede the flow of people coming in and out. So they're making it very, very much easier using technology. Technology exists today to do all sorts of wonderful things. Whether or not states are minded to adopt that technology is open to the states, okay, whichever ones they may be.
I feel confident in asking you this question. Your opinion on the way the European states, the EU, is introducing its digital passport, its digitization of entry and exit through the machines and the use thereof. Your thoughts?
It's something they should have done a long time ago. The technology has been there for a long time. All they've got to do is take a look at the countries like this to see how they've advanced. The United Kingdom has been doing it for some time. The Americans have been doing it for some time. Now they've decided that as an entity, that all the countries within the European Union should have common access for their own citizens to move, as well as for foreigners to come in and out of. That's no bad thing. That's really where we should be going. So, one of the big problems going forward in aviation is the ground product, the way airports are not being developed, the systems are not being designed, given the technology platforms that could help them, whether it be check-in, whether it be passport control, whether it could be central search. If we got that right, using the technology that we have today, forget what's coming later, things will be a lot smoother. But for reasons best known to the countries in which these airports sit, they have different agendas as to how this is going to be done. It could be
a dog's breakfast at the moment.
Well, I was going to say there might be multi-stakeholders who have different views in a particular country as to how it should go. It could be the police, it could be security, it could be whatever it may be. So these are natural impediments to getting the job done. But technology exists. We've tried it here in Dubai for years now, and we're advancing at pace. We can take people through and out of Dubai and into Dubai without any kind of physical interdiction at all. And you can do that in other countries of the world as well. So It's there for you. You can do it. Thank goodness the Europeans have got on top of that. It's a bit of a Herculean task trying to get registered for that. But once you're done, then there's absolutely no reason why you should have, foreigners and EU citizens and part EU citizens, all these lanes and lines. You just walk through, and the technology is there. So, if we move forward on that at the pace that we should do, there's no excuse, given what we have today and the power of computing, to be able to get this sorted within the next 5 years.
There's maybe no excuse, but you don't sound terribly helpful or hopeful.
Look, the airline industry is remarkably good at workarounds. They will adapt whatever they have to do. We welcome, and I'm not talking about Emirates, I'm talking about everybody, any airport, any country that facilitates the smooth flow of their passengers and, of course, their cargo as well, makes our lives a lot simpler. It makes the whole back of house work so much simpler. It's a message that, of course, ICAO would be out there saying, come on, guys, if we have common ground, there are these kind of things we can do together. Don't worry about whether, we have differences of opinion on environment and sustainability, but these kind of things are where the centralized organizations can bring value.
Let me, you get the last word. Are you hopeful in your time as president you can make progress on something like this?
Yes, that is my mission. It is not only the matter of the optimistic, that is the matter I need to do. In particular, for example, what he said is correct. Technology, in my view, already prepared. But how to prioritize this technology to contribute to the aviation is another matter. For example, immigration policy. Immigration need to think about not only aviation, but also the other prioritized matters. But how to prioritize aviation in the context of global economy is one of my very important missions.
Are you confident you can make progress?
Of course, I'm confident.
Ladies and gentlemen, our panel.